Marcus Chen was having a terrible day. The maintenance technician stared at the flashing red warning light on his tablet, wondering how things had gone so wrong so quickly. It was supposed to be a simple repair job in Space Station Gamma 9's alien diplomatic wing. Just fix the temperature regulator, his supervisor had said. Don't talk to anyone. Don't touch anything else. And for heaven's sake, don't break quarantine protocols. Well, he had managed to break all 3 rules in less than an hour. The problem started when Marcus noticed a small crack in one of the radiation shield panels. He knew he should report it and wait for proper authorization, but it was such a tiny crack. He could fix it in 5 minutes, and no one would even know he had been there. As he pulled out his repair kit, a tall, silvery figure emerged from around the corner. The alien was at least 7 feet tall, with iridescent skin that shifted colors like oil on water. Marcus recognized the species immediately, an Arcturnian diplomat. They were famous across the galaxy for 2 things: their strict personal space requirements and their absolute dedication to cleanliness protocols. The Arcturnian, whose name tag displayed Zixtal in glowing letters, stopped abruptly. Its skin flashed bright orange with shock. Human, you are not authorized to be in this section. Zixtal's translator device made the words sound like they were being spoken through a fan. The radiation shields are active. Marcus tried to explain, but at that exact moment, his repair tool slipped. The crack in the panel widened slightly, and a soft beeping filled the corridor. Radiation leak detected, announced the station's AI in its calm, emotionless voice. Emergency quarantine protocols initiated. Before either of them could move, transparent barriers slammed down at both ends of the corridor. The air shimmered as decontamination fields activated. Please proceed to the nearest quarantine chamber, the AI continued. Duration of quarantine: 14 standard Earth days. Marcus watched in horror as Zixtal's skin cycled through a rainbow of colors before settling on a deep purple of what he assumed was rage or despair. Maybe both. The only available quarantine chamber was designed for 2 occupants. It had a small living area, basic sanitation facilities, and 2 sleeping pods. Unfortunately, it was about half the size of what a single Arcturnian considered minimum personal space. This is unacceptable. Zixtal's skin was now flashing like a broken disco ball. I cannot share quarters with a maintenance worker. Do you know how many cleanliness protocols you violated? The diplomatic implications alone. Look, Marcus interrupted, trying to sound calmer than he felt. I'm not happy about this either. But that radiation leak is real, and this chamber is our only option unless you want to glow in the dark for the rest of your life. The station AI chimed in helpfully, radiation levels increasing. Please enter quarantine chamber within the next 30 seconds to avoid cellular damage. Zixtal made a sound like wind chimes in a hurricane, probably Arcturnian cursing, and glided into the chamber. Marcus followed, trying to make himself as small as possible. As the chamber door sealed behind them with a soft hiss, Marcus couldn't help but notice how the 15 by 15 foot space suddenly felt very, very small. Zixtal had pressed itself into the farthest corner, its skin now a muted gray of obvious distress. So, Marcus said, attempting to break the awkward silence, I'm Marcus. I like long walks on the promenade and fixing things. Though I guess I'm not very good at the second part today. Zixtal's only response was to turn a deeper shade of gray and begin what looked like a complicated series of cleansing gestures. It was going to be a very long 14 days. 3 hours into their quarantine, Marcus was learning many interesting things about Arcturnians. For example, they didn't need to eat regular food. Instead, they absorbed energy through their skin like walking solar panels. This explained why Zixtal had been horrified when Marcus pulled out his emergency ration pack. You're putting dead matter in your body. Zixtal's skin turned a sickly green color. And then, it comes out the other end. Well, when you put it that way, it does sound kind of gross, Marcus admitted, trying to eat his protein bar as quietly as possible. But that's how humans work. We can't photosynthesize like you do. The quarantine chamber's lighting wasn't helping matters. It was too bright for Marcus, but too dim for Zixtal, who needed strong light for energy absorption. The temperature was another problem. Comfortable for humans, but chilly for Arcturnians. "This is barbaric," Zixtal declared, its skin flickering between frustrated red and exhausted blue. "The environmental controls are clearly calibrated for human comfort." Marcus looked up from his tablet. "Actually, they're set to a middle ground that's uncomfortable for both of us. See," he showed Zixtal the environmental readouts. "The station AI is trying to compromise." This seemed to surprise the Arcturnian. Its colors shifted to a thoughtful purple. "Then, you are also experiencing discomfort." "Yeah, it's like trying to relax in a doctor's office with the lights turned up to maximum." Marcus squinted at the harsh overhead lighting. "Plus, no offense, but your stress patterns are like trying to sleep next to a disco ball." Zixtal's skin immediately dimmed. "My apologies. I was unaware my chromatic emissions were causing you distress." Marcus felt guilty. No, I'm sorry. You can't help it. It's just..." He looked around the small chamber, then at his tool belt that the AI had allowed him to keep after decontamination. "Actually, I might have an idea." Over the next hour, Marcus worked with his limited tools while Zixtal watched with growing curiosity. Using spare parts from his repair kit and some of the chamber's removable panels, he constructed a makeshift divider. It wasn't perfect, but it created two distinct spaces within the chamber. "See, now you can have your side bright for energy absorption, and I can dim my side for comfort," Marcus explained, demonstrating how the divider could be adjusted. "And we each get some privacy." Zixtal examined the construction with surprising interest. Its skin shifted to a color Marcus hadn't seen before, a soft, pearly white. "This is quite ingenious. You created this solution with such limited resources." "Well, yeah. When you work maintenance, you learn to get creative." Marcus shrugged. "It's not pretty, but it works." "Perhaps," Zixtal said slowly, its color shifting to what Marcus was starting to recognize as their thinking pattern. "Humans have some admirable qualities after all, though your digestive processes are still disturbing." Marcus laughed. "Fair enough. And maybe Arcturnians aren't as uptight as everyone says. You know, except about the whole eating thing." For the first time, Zixtal made a sound that might have been an Arcturnian chuckle, like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. As they settled into their respective sides of the chamber, Marcus realized something important. Sometimes the best way to understand someone different from you was to first give them space to be themselves, even if that space was just half of a quarantine chamber. "Hey Zixtal," Marcus called over the divider. "Just curious, what does that pearly white color mean?" There was a pause before the alien responded. "It is our color of pleasant surprise." Marcus smiled. Maybe these 14 days wouldn't be so bad after all. Day 3 of quarantine started with a loud pop and a fizzle. Marcus and Zixtal watched in dismay as their universal translators sparked and died, victims of the lingering radiation that had forced them into quarantine in the first place. "Well, that's just perfect," Marcus muttered, though to Zixtal it probably sounded like meaningless human noises. The Arcturnians' response came as a series of musical chimes and color changes that Marcus couldn't understand at all. They stared at each other across Marcus's makeshift divider. The situation was already awkward enough with translation. Without it, things were about to get much more complicated. Marcus pointed to himself. "Marcus," he said slowly, then pointed to Zixtal. "Zixtal." The Arcturnian skin shifted to what Marcus now recognized as their version of an eye roll, a ripple of exasperated yellow. Zixtal made a gesture that clearly meant, "I already know that, you idiot." Marcus grinned. Some things, it seemed, didn't need translation. He grabbed his tablet and started drawing. His artistic skills weren't great, but he managed a crude stick figure drinking from a cup. He pointed to himself. then the drawing, then made a drinking motion. Zixtal's skin flickered with interest. The alien moved closer to the divider and pointed to Marcus's water bottle, then made a gesture like waves flowing. Yes, water. Marcus nodded enthusiastically. He drew another picture, this time of the chamber's temperature controls, then made a shivering motion. Zixtal's skin brightened with understanding. The alien drew its own picture, a much more elegant diagram of the chamber's lighting system, and pointed upward while changing to a dimmer shade. They spent the next few hours developing their own communication system. Pictures became their nouns, gestures their verbs, and Zixtal's color changes added emotional context that Marcus was slowly learning to read. Dark blue meant confusion. Bright orange was excitement. A swirling pattern of green and purple indicated deep thought. The breakthrough came when Marcus was trying to explain human jokes. He drew a cartoon of someone slipping on a banana peel, complete with stick figure arms flailing. To his surprise, Zixtal's skin erupted in sparkles of silver, their equivalent of laughter. The Arcturnian then spent 20 minutes creating an elaborate color display that Marcus finally realized was their version of a joke, something about light wavelengths and quantum physics that he didn't fully understand, but the way Zixtal's colors danced made him laugh anyway. By evening, they had filled several tablet pages with their makeshift dictionary, simple drawings, color patterns, and gestures that meant things like hungry for Marcus, need more light for Zixtal, bored, tired, and even that's what she said, which took a remarkably long time to explain across species. As they were winding down for sleep cycle, Zixtal suddenly made a series of gentle chiming sounds while displaying a new color, a warm golden glow that Marcus hadn't seen before. "What's that one mean?" Marcus asked, forgetting for a moment that Zixtal couldn't understand his words. He pointed to the alien's glowing skin and tilted his head questioningly. Zixtal seemed to consider for a moment, then drew a simple picture: two stick figures, one human and one Arcturnian, sitting together and sharing a tablet. Below it, the alien drew what looked like a smile. Marcus felt his own face break into a grin. He didn't need a translator to understand that one. It was the Arcturnian color for friendship. That night, as Marcus drifted off to sleep, he realized something fascinating. Sometimes losing the ability to speak properly forces you to find better ways to understand each other. On the other side of the divider, Zixtal glowed softly in that same warm, golden color, like a friendly nightlight in the darkness of space. On day 5 of quarantine, Marcus woke up to a strange whistling sound. His first thought was that Zixtal had developed a new way of communicating. But when he saw the Arcturnian skin had turned an alarming shade of pale gray, he knew something was wrong. "What's happening?" he tried to ask, before remembering their translators were broken. Instead, he pointed to his chest, made an exaggerated breathing motion, and gave a thumbs down. Zixtal's skin pulsed rapidly, their equivalent of a nod. The alien gestured to the air vents and made a choking motion. Even without words, the message was clear. They were having trouble breathing. Marcus checked his tablet's environmental readings and felt his heart skip a beat. The atmospheric recycling system was failing. The oxygen levels were dropping and carbon dioxide was building up. Even worse, the trace elements that Arcturnians needed for survival were almost completely gone. He tried the emergency call button. Nothing happened. The radiation damage that had killed their translators must have affected other systems too. Zixtal was now huddled in the corner, skin barely glowing. Marcus knew that when Arcturnians lost their color, they were in serious trouble. They had maybe an hour before things got really bad. He grabbed his tablet and started drawing frantically. First, he sketched the recycling system, or at least what he knew of it from his maintenance work. Zixtal perked up slightly, moving closer to watch. The Arcturnian's long fingers traced over the drawing, then grabbed the tablet. With quick, precise movements, Zixtal added complex chemical symbols to the diagram. Even without translation, Marcus recognized them, as atmospheric elements. "You know chemistry?" Marcus asked reflexively, then switched to their makeshift sign language, pointing to Zixtal, then to the chemical symbols, ending with a questioning gesture. Zixtal's skin flickered briefly to that scholarly purple color they used when sharing knowledge. The alien pointed to their diplomatic badge, then made a series of gestures that Marcus interpreted as specialized training. They spent the next 15 minutes in a frantic exchange of drawings and gestures. Marcus contributed his practical knowledge of the station's systems, while Zixtal added vital information about atmospheric chemistry. The solution they came up with was crazy, but they were running out of options. Marcus would need to partially dismantle his makeshift divider and combine it with parts from his toolkit. Meanwhile, Zixtal removed several decorative bands from their ceremonial outfit, apparently made of materials that could help filter the air. Working together was like a strange dance. Marcus would point to a tool. Zixtal would change color to indicate yes or no. Zixtal would gesture toward a particular panel. Marcus would nod or shake his head. Neither fully understood the other's expertise, but both trusted that the other knew what they were doing. With trembling hands and increasingly labored breathing, they assembled their makeshift atmospheric processor. It looked like a cross between a school science project and modern art, but when Marcus connected the last wire, something incredible happened. The air made a soft whooshing sound. Marcus's tablet showed oxygen levels rising. More importantly, Zixtal's skin began to brighten, returning to its normal luminescent sheen. They had done it. Relief made Marcus lightheaded, though that might have been the recent lack of oxygen. He slumped against the wall, giving Zixtal a weak thumbs up. The Arcturnian responded by glowing in that warm, golden color of friendship, but with an extra shimmer that Marcus had never seen before. He didn't need a translation to understand. It was gratitude. That evening, after the station's maintenance crew had been notified and was working on proper repairs, Marcus realized something important. When your life depends on someone else, it doesn't matter if they eat solid food or photosynthesize. All that matters is working together. Zixtal, apparently thinking similar thoughts, had started drawing up plans to make their temporary fix into a permanent backup system. Crisis, it seemed, was quite the teacher. Day 7 of quarantine began differently than the others. Instead of keeping to their separate sides of the chamber, Marcus and Zixtal sat together, examining their jointly created atmospheric processor with pride. Nearly dying together had a way of breaking down barriers. "You know," Marcus said, forgetting for a moment that their translators were still broken, "this thing is actually pretty beautiful." He gestured to indicate the strange mix of maintenance tools and Arcturnian ceremonial pieces. Zixtal's skin rippled with gentle colors, blues and purples that Marcus now recognized as agreement and satisfaction. The alien reached for their tablet and began drawing. Over the past week, their primitive communication system had evolved. What started as simple stick figures had become more complex. Zixtal drew a series of interconnected circles, each glowing with different colors. Then, using their fingertip, the alien made the colors shift and dance across the screen. "Is this your home?" Marcus asked, making their agreed-upon gesture for place of origin. Zixtal's skin flashed a happy silver. The alien pointed to the largest circle, then to themselves, making a gesture they'd established meant family. Understanding dawned on Marcus's face. "This is your family's light pattern, like a family crest, but with colors." Excited by Marcus's comprehension, Zixtal began drawing more patterns. Through a combination of pictures, gestures, and color displays, the alien explained how Arcturnian families pass down unique light patterns through generations. Each pattern told a story of their ancestors' achievements and hopes for the future. Not to be outdone, Marcus pulled out his wallet. From it, he retrieved a worn photograph. "This is my family," he said, pointing to each person in turn. His mother's warm smile, his father's proud stance, his sister's mischievous grin. Zixtal studied the photo with intense interest, skin shifting through thoughtful shades of purple. The alien pointed to the smiles, then to Marcus, then made their gesture for same. Yeah, Marcus laughed. My sister and I have the same smile. Good eye. They spent hours sharing stories about their families. Marcus learned that Arcturnian children glowed in soft pastels until they were old enough to control their colors. Zixtal discovered that human families often gathered to share meals, a concept both fascinating and horrifying to the photosynthetic alien. As evening approached, Zixtal did something unexpected. The alien dimmed their skin almost completely, then began producing a subtle, intricate pattern of lights. It was like watching stars being born and dying, galaxies spinning in miniature across Zixtal's skin. This is beautiful, Marcus whispered, entranced. Through careful gestures and drawings, Zixtal explained. This was a ceremonial light pattern, traditionally shared only with close family and friends. It told the story of their people's first journey into space, their discovery of other intelligent life, and their hopes for understanding between species. Deeply moved, Marcus wanted to share something equally meaningful. He thought for a moment, then began to softly hum an old lullaby his mother used to sing. The simple melody filled the chamber, and to his amazement, Zixtal's light pattern began to shift in time with the music. They sat there, human music and alien lights intertwining, creating something entirely new. Neither of them had proper words to describe it, but they didn't need them. That night, as they prepared for sleep, Marcus noticed the divider he built seemed less necessary than before. Zixtal must have felt the same way, because the alien's nighttime glow was stronger than usual, creating gentle patterns on the ceiling that reminded Marcus of the aurora borealis on Earth. As he drifted off to sleep, Marcus realized that understanding doesn't always need words. Sometimes it just needs an open mind and a willing heart, even if one of those hearts happened to be powered by photosynthesis. On day 9 of quarantine, Marcus and Zixtal's peaceful routine was interrupted by angry voices from their chamber's monitor screen. The station's newsfeed was showing a heated argument between human and Arcturnian officials. This is clearly a human plot to disrupt diplomatic relations, an Arcturnian representative was saying, their skin flashing angry red patterns. Your maintenance worker deliberately breached our section's security. That's ridiculous. A human official shot back. If your radiation shielding had been properly maintained, none of this would have happened. Marcus and Zixtal exchanged worried looks. Without working translators, they had to rely on their makeshift sign language. But their concern was mutual and clear. Zixtal pointed to the screen, then made their gesture for family group, followed by the color pattern for distress. Marcus understood. This argument could affect all their people, not just them. They're going to ruin everything, Marcus muttered, forgetting momentarily that Zixtal couldn't understand his words. He drew a quick sketch of two groups moving apart, then made a braking motion with his hands. Zixtal's skin turned that sickly gray color of worry. The alien drew a series of pictures. The quarantine chamber, them working together on the atmospheric processor, their shared stories. Then, with a dramatic gesture, crossed everything out. You think all this will be wasted? Marcus asked through gestures. Everything we learned about each other. The news feed continued showing more arguments. Some human officials were demanding the removal of all Arcturnian diplomats from the station. The Arcturnians were threatening to cut off vital trade routes in response. Marcus felt his heart sink as he watched. In just 9 days, he and Zixtal had moved past their differences to become friends. But out there, both sides were ready to throw away years of diplomatic relations over one accident. Suddenly, Zixtal's skin began pulsing with their idea pattern, rapid flashes of bright yellow and white. The alien pointed to their jury-rigged atmospheric processor, then to the chamber's communication panel. Marcus's eyes widened as he understood. You want to show them what we did, how we worked together. Through a complex series of gestures and drawings, they worked out a plan. The communication panel was damaged, but between Marcus's technical skills and Sixtel's knowledge of diplomatic override codes, they might be able to broadcast their story to the station. They spent hours working on the panel. Marcus stripped wires and reconnected circuits, while Sixtel input various diplomatic authorization sequences. It was like their previous crisis in miniature, each contributing their unique skills toward a common goal. Finally, Marcus made the last connection. The panel sparked, flickered, and came to life. But they had only enough power for a short broadcast. They would need to make it count. Sixtel began a complex light display, which Marcus recognized as their story, from hostile strangers to friends who saved each other's lives. Meanwhile, Marcus held up their shared tablet, showing their journey through pictures. The divider they built together, their made-up sign language, the atmospheric processor that combined both their technologies. As they transmitted their message to the station, they could only hope it would be enough. Through their chamber window, they could see other residents of the station gathering around public screens, watching their silent but powerful demonstration of cooperation. That night, as they waited for any response from the outside, Marcus drew a simple picture. 2 stick figures, one human and one Arcturnian, standing together against a storm. Sixtel responded by glowing in their color for friendship, but with an added intensity that seemed to say, no matter what happens, this is real. Sometimes, they both realized, the best answer to big problems is to show how small solutions can work. Now they just had to hope everyone else could see it too. Day 11 of quarantine brought surprising results. Marcus and Sixtel woke to find their chamber's monitor displaying news from all over the station. Their makeshift broadcast had gone viral. Everywhere, screens showed images of their unusual friendship, a human maintenance worker and an Arcturnian diplomat, working together, communicating without translators, and even saving each other's lives. It wasn't just a story anymore. It was becoming a symbol. Look, Marcus pointed excitedly at the screen, where a group of human engineers was studying their atmospheric processor design. Next to them, Arcturnian scientists were nodding appreciatively, their skin glowing with interest. Sixtel's color shifted to a bright, sparkling silver, their version of delighted laughter. The alien pointed to another screen showing human and Arcturnian children trying to copy their made-up sign language. Through their chamber window, they could see something even more remarkable. In the station's common areas, humans and Arcturnians were actually talking to each other. Some humans were attempting to learn color-based expressions, while Arcturnians were practicing human gestures and facial expressions. "We did it," Marcus said, making their gesture for success. "We actually did it." Sixtel responded by creating a complex light pattern that Marcus now recognized as their sign for unexpected friendship. Then the alien drew a quick sketch, their quarantine chamber with an arrow pointing outward, followed by a picture of the whole station. Marcus understood immediately. Their small example was spreading, changing how both species saw each other. The station's administration made an announcement. They were establishing a new cultural exchange initiative. The first project, a joint human Arcturnian team would develop better environmental systems using the principles from Marcus and Sixtel's emergency repair. But the real surprise came that afternoon. Their chamber's communication panel crackled to life with a proper transmission. Someone had finally fixed it. The face of the station's commander appeared on screen. "Mr. Chen, Ambassador Sixtel," the commander said, as a newly installed translator converted his words for both of them. "Your unique situation has created quite a stir. The Human Arcturnian Council has reviewed your case." Marcus and Sixtel exchanged nervous glances. Would they be punished for the quarantine breach? "They were particularly impressed by your innovative solution to the atmospheric crisis," the commander continued. "And your method of cultural exchange, while unorthodox, has proven remarkably effective." Sixtel's skin rippled with cautious hope colors, while Marcus held his breath. "Therefore, once your quarantine ends, you're both being reassigned. Mr. Chen, you'll head a new cross-species technical team. Ambassador Zixtal, you'll lead our cultural exchange program. That is, if you're both willing." Marcus broke into a huge grin and looked at Zixtal, who was glowing in that warm golden color of friendship with added swirls of excited purple. They both signaled their agreement, Marcus with an enthusiastic thumbs up, Zixtal with a formal diplomatic light pattern. After the commander signed off, they celebrated in their own way. Marcus taught Zixtal to high five, which the alien found bizarrely fascinating, while Zixtal created a stunning light show that made the whole chamber dance with color. That evening, as they sat together reviewing more news feeds, Marcus noticed something different. The makeshift divider he built on their first day now served as a backrest where they both leaned while watching the screens. What was once a wall between them had become a shared support. Zixtal must have noticed too, because the alien's skin shifted to a new color, a gentle rainbow swirl that Marcus had never seen before. "What's that one mean?" he asked, using their sign language. Zixtal drew a simple picture, a bridge between two different worlds. Marcus smiled. Sometimes the best solutions come from the most unexpected places, even a quarantine chamber in space. 3 months after their quarantine ended, Marcus and Zixtal stood in Space Station Gamma 9's newly built Cultural Exchange Center. The room that had once been a simple meeting area now featured both human-style furniture and Arcturnian light absorption zones. "Remember when you thought my eating habits were disgusting?" Marcus asked, watching a group of Arcturnian diplomats cautiously sampling human snacks while their skin flickered between curiosity and mild disgust. Zixtal's skin rippled with silver laughter. "And you thought my bioluminescence was like a disco ball," the alien replied through their new, improved translator. The device had been specifically designed for human Arcturnian communication, inspired by their quarantine experience. The center was their proudest achievement. One wall displayed their famous atmospheric processor, now properly rebuilt and serving as both a backup system and a symbol of cooperation. Next to it, screens showed their quarantine story, complete with their makeshift sign language that had since become a popular basic communication method between the species. Chief Engineer Chen, a young human technician, called out, running up to Marcus. "The Arcturnian light responsive tools you designed with Ambassador Zixtal are amazing. They're reducing repair times by 50%. Marcus grinned. His new position as head of cross-species technical development had led to many such innovations. Combining human practical engineering with Arcturnian light-based technology had opened up possibilities nobody had imagined before. Zixtal, meanwhile, was teaching a group of human diplomats the basics of color emotion expression using special light-emitting suits. "Remember," the alien explained, "bright silver means joy, not confusion." One human last week accidentally declared war instead of requesting dinner. Everyone laughed, the humans' chuckles mixing with the musical chiming of Arcturnian amusement. These kinds of mistakes had become learning opportunities rather than diplomatic incidents. In one corner of the center, their old quarantine chamber had been preserved as a historical exhibit, but they'd removed the divider Marcus had built. It wasn't needed anymore. Instead, the space featured pictures of their journey from reluctant quarantine mates to pioneering friends. "You know what's funny?" Marcus said, walking over to the chamber with Zixtal. "If you hadn't been such a clean freak, and if I hadn't been such a rule breaker, none of this would have happened." Zixtal's skin showed the complex swirling pattern that meant deep thought. "Perhaps the universe has a sense of humor," the alien replied. "It took two complete opposites to show everyone how much alike we really are." Just then, a small commotion drew their attention. A human child had accidentally spilled water near an Arcturnian visitor. But instead of the diplomatic crisis this would have caused months ago, the Arcturnian simply glowed in gentle amusement while the child's parent helped clean up. "Progress," Marcus said softly. "Indeed," Zixtal agreed, skin glowing with that warm golden friendship color that Marcus had come to know so well. "Though I still don't understand why humans insist on teaching us poker. The cards are so physical." Marcus laughed. Hey, at least we're not making you eat the chips anymore. Their conversation was interrupted by an announcement. The first joint human-Arcturian space exploration team was preparing to launch. The mission would use a ship designed with both species' needs in mind, inspired by their quarantine innovations. As they watched the crew, a mix of humans and Arcturians, doing final preparations, Marcus thought about how far they'd come. From a broken radiation shield to a broken translator to nearly broken atmospheric systems, every problem had become an opportunity to build something better. Ready for tomorrow's conference? Marcus asked. They were scheduled to share their story with representatives from 10 more alien species. Zixtal glowed confidently. Ready, though perhaps we should leave out the part about your emergency ration bars. Deal, Marcus grinned. Some things are better left in quarantine. And as they walked together through their cultural exchange center, their shadows merged on the floor, one solid, one glowing, but moving in perfect harmony.